Hi, hello, how are you? I'm Alex and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, then nice to meet you. If you're coming back, then we're best friends now. You know how it goes. I hope you're doing well, and if not, I totally get that. You know, we've all been there, and I hope tomorrow is better. Today, I will be sharing with you all my August reads. Lots to chat about. I read some very popular classics this month. I also read some graphic novels and some YA and some memoirs, or I started one and finished one. The first book that I read in August was Sheets by Brenna Thummler. I really loved the art in this graphic novel. I think it's beautiful. I love the colors and I love the drawings. It's quite a popular graphic novel. I've been hearing about it for a long time in real life and on BookTube, and I really loved it. You know, it's about this young girl who is struggling with the grief after the loss of her mother, and she's taking care of the laundromat that her family owns that was previously run by her mother. And things are not going very well. There's a man that keeps harassing her to buy the property. People are complaining about the service. And on top of all that, she's being haunted by a ghost. It was very sweet and definitely sadder than I expected it to be, but I found that in the end it was quite uplifting. I would love the chance to reread this. I borrowed it from the library as an ebook, so I just read it on my phone, but I'd love to read a physical copy of this and just get the chance to fully appreciate the art for what it is. I have been really falling in love with graphic novels this year. That is one of the best things about 2021. It's just all the graphic novels I've been reading, and I really can't wait to read more. After that, as you all know, I read One Last Stop by Casey Mckisten. This is about a girl who moves to New York on her own in the hopes of starting a new life. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I loved the book, and if you want to hear more about my thoughts or more about what the book is about, you can check out my reading vlog on that, which was so fun to make. I read it on my e-reader, but I would really love to own a physical copy of this book and give it a reread. I liked it a lot more than Red, White, and Royal Blue. The characters are fantastic, and the whole aspect of magical realism in it was just so good. After One Last Stop, I read Just Kids by Patti Smith. I've been meaning to read this for a while. I had previously read M Train by her last summer, and I really liked it, and then I finally got my hands on a copy of Just Kids, and I finally got around to reading it this summer. It really just felt like such an honor to read the story of Patti and her perspective of Robert Mapplethorpe's life. It was just so beautiful to read an artist's perspective of another artist who she loves so deeply. I really love how Patti Smith's memoirs have all kinds of pictures and drawings in them. After that, I read Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer. I have the whole trilogy up here, but I don't want to take it out of my bookshelf. I actually ended up mostly listening to it as an audiobook, which is much better just because I find that the last two books in the trilogy are kind of slow. And I'm so glad to finally finish a trilogy. I haven't finished a series since I was like 14. But I enjoyed it a lot better than I liked Authority, which I didn't like very much. But I still didn't like it as much as Annihilation. The storytelling was very stilted, and you know, there was a lot of jumping back and forth from different narrators and different time periods. And I really did like the backstory to Area X and the Southern Reach. However, it was just too much of this is what happened in the past, and then this is what happened in the more recent past, and then this is what happened after. It wasn't as good as Annihilation. Annihilation just really blew my mind. Such an original idea. So I definitely recommend Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. If you're interested in reading the trilogy, I do recommend it. I really like listening to the audiobooks. However, I can't recommend the second and third book as much as I do the first. Then I listened to the audiobook for Between the World and Me by Ta-nehisi. Gosh, that was such a powerful book. I read it in one single sitting. It's written as a letter from father to son about what it's like to be a black man in America and how they're consistently perceived as dangerous and as a threat when at the end of the day they're very often the victim of heinous crimes caused by the police. Coates just has such a talent for writing, and listening to him narrate his own book was so incredible. He was truly meant to be a writer, and it is so clear in his writing and his prose. After that, I read a Canadian novel called Jade, Peony by Wayson, Choi. This was a book that I found in one of those little libraries in my neighborhood, and it was a pretty big disappointment. I was really looking forward to it because it's a new perspective in fiction that I haven't read before. There are 3 parts to the novel, and it's told from perspective of the only daughter, the adopted son, and the youngest son. And the first story was interesting, but I still found it quite repetitive. The novel in general was very repetitive. After that, I read Loveless by Oseman. I really took my time with this. It almost took me a month to read this book, and it was so good. It's about this young girl named Georgia, and she's starting university with her best friends Pip and Jason. Her whole life she loves, reading fanfics and reading about romance and love and all of that, and she's determined to live out her own romance story. But she's really having a hard time actually doing that. She loves reading about romance, but she doesn't necessarily like being involved in it. Through this journey, she discovers a lot about herself and her sexuality. She makes new friends, and there's just so much good rep in this book. Younger generations are going to have that kind of representation in books and see themselves in stories. And I really love Georgia as a character. I really liked her roommate Rooney, and it was just such a fun read, and I'm actually really looking forward to rereading it. Then I read Heartstopper Volume 2 by Oseman. I really can't believe it took me so long to get into Oseman's books. I guess it's just because they write YA, and I don't typically read YA, but their books are just so good. I love Heartstopper. I love the art in it, as I said in my July reading wrap-up. So good. The second one is still excellent, and it's just so wholesome, and Nick and Charlie are so sweet. This book actually made me cry, and it's the first book in 2021, and to be honest, in a while, that has made me cry. I haven't read a book that's made me cry in a really long time. Years probably. I love the story, and I love to see that kind of wholesome content and get all that goodness from Oseman's books. Then I read a book that should be a major red flag if anybody ever tells you that it's their favorite, and that's 1984 by George Orwell. I can't understand why this is so well loved and why it's so popular. It's dystopian fiction, and a lot of people love to see that, and a lot of people say that this was so well ahead of its time, and it's about a totalitarian regime that has total control over its people, and it's follows one character. He works for the government, and he's dedicated to his work, but he is responsible for thought crime because he doesn't fully believe in the agenda of Big Brother. It was so annoying that the only relevant female character in this book was a manic pixie dream girl. Like, seriously? And she was such a woman hater. Like, it's so blatantly obvious to me that Orwell is a misogynist and just does not like women. And I went on to read some articles, and there were some fellow author friends of him that we're talking about how Orwell like despised women and he thought that they were lesser than men. Yeah, like Julia, she's the main female character in this book, and she hates women so much and she thinks women are so vapid and useless. And it was just such an eye roll, and like there were so many violent, unnecessary comments about women and towards the women in this book that I was just like, ugh, okay. The last book I read this month was, or that I finished this month because I've been reading it for a while, was our August pick for our book club, and that was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Am I reading a different book to you people? Like, are we reading the same Pride and Prejudice by the same Jane Austen? Because people have been so shocked that I haven't read this as a book lover, and people talk about how great it is. I honestly did not have a good time. It is so wordy. The men, especially Mr. Collins and Mr. Wingham, talk so much. Like, it would just be pages and pages of these men monologuing, and it was so boring. It just did not capture the magic and the romance the same way the movie does, and that's why me and my friend ended up picking it for a book club, because we love the movie so much and we've seen it so many times, so we were really excited to read it because neither of us have read Pride and Prejudice yet. I was disappointed. This was so underwhelming for me, and I gave it 2 stars. I'm still looking forward to reading Emma by Jane Austen because a lot of people do have really good things to say about it, but otherwise I don't think I'll be reading any other Jane Austens. Sorry. Anyway, that's all for today. I did do a lot of reading in August. Like this video if you like this video. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content. Let me know what you guys read this August, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.